So I was reading the comments on yesterday's video, and there was one comment where someone was saying, well, if someone shoots me because I'm wearing pink armor, well, then that shouldn't be allowed in the game's rules, or something to that effect. I read it, and my eyes kind of rolled out of my head for a little while. What you have to understand, and this is going to be a very reclaimer-centric video, and we're going to get there in a moment, but I think we have to kind of touch on this subject first. What people don't understand is that your armor isn't a reflection of your personality or your pizzazz, what your armor is it's a functional utility. I need to go into this environment, so I need this armor. I'm going into that environment, so I need that armor. I choose certain colors for that armor to blend me into the background to make me less conspicuous and less likely to get shot. If you think about it, if you're at a point where you land your ship and all of a sudden you find out there's a sniper outside of the landing zone and you're stuck where you went to buy your minerals and now you got to run back to your ship, or someone is chasing you around an area like that and you're just trying to kill them and then get back to your ship, having bright armor that makes you stand out is going to make it much easier for the other person to spot you and potentially kill you. You're basically handicapping yourself. What people often misunderstand, sometimes on a subconscious level, is when you look at a movie like Star Wars or you look at a movie like Star Trek, when they design uniforms for these shows or they design weapons or ships, they design them to have a certain shape language to fulfill a certain emotional need. Like, oh, we got to make the Klingon ships look really aggressive, or the Imperial ships have got to look really uniform, whereas the Rebel fleet is just a hodgepodge of all these different types of ships from all these different civilizations kind of uniting together, or different worlds, or whatever, however you want to break it up. They're doing these things for artistic reasons, because in the artistic world of, let's say, a movie, you just have to write a few lines of dialogue, like, how does this ship travel faster than the speed of light? Matter, antimatter reactor, and dilithium crystals. Like, okay, good. But in a game like Star Citizen, you're bound by certain physical universe realities because you're trying to create a first-person game. And one of these big things is that, let's say you want to get on and off a ship. It doesn't matter what the artist wants or what the creator wants. You have to be able to get on and off that ship. And it has to be a practical door. A ship needs to have a place to potentially store your guns, ammo, water, food, things, all these things that you're going to need in the game. This is some of the things that I've been talking about recently. And there are certain practical requirements that the Star Citizen universe imposes upon you that a lot of people aren't seemingly fully grasping yet. Armor is the same thing. It's not about fashion. It's about not getting shot. When you think about the military, most military uniforms, the only example that I can think of that doesn't really kind of conform to this would be the Swiss Guards of the Vatican, because they wear that old fancy uniform that Michelangelo designed like years and years ago with those halberds. It's all multicolored and it's kind of ridiculous, but most other military uniforms are designed not so much for the soldiers to stand out as to make the soldiers blend in. There's a dress uniform that you wear to ceremonies that makes you stand out, but out in the field you wear camouflage and you wear things to kind of blend you into the background to make you less likely to get shot, because you may not realize this, but militaries around the world invest millions of dollars into soldiers. They train them, they feed them, they house them, they build them up, and contrary to what some people would have you believe, they don't like throwing those lives away needlessly. It's a very, very daunting choice to kind of put people in harm's way, especially, even if you take out the emotional component and look at the cash component, how much you've invested in that person. You think about a fighter pilot and how many millions of dollars you've spent training a fighter pilot. That's why not everybody gets to be a fighter pilot, consequently, as well, is because you got to make sure you have the right person for the right job, and you don't want to waste all this money on a nobody who's not going to be able to hack it, right? But you're spending all this money on people, you don't want them to get blasted. That's why you train them and all that, and that's why you don't dress them up in colorful pink outfits and then send them out to war, because it's going to make them easier to kill. And it's the same thing with Star Citizen. You have to realize that a lot of people are treating these armors as like a fashion choice, and CIG is certainly, guilty of driving that idea. But the truth of it is whether it's bright pink outfits, or it's, armor that's all lit up like a Christmas tree. We're going to go with the season and a little bit of a theme there, but you're making the person more conspicuous and easier to shoot. And what you need is flat, dull colors that can blend into different backgrounds. Certainly, if you think about all the environments that you may travel to, where you might be forced to do combat, let's say you're a mercenary, and you might be doing bunkers at Microtech or bunkers at Yella or wherever, you're going to need certain outfits to blend into the background to make yourself less conspicuous and less likely to get shot. And so that's the reason why buying armor like that might seem like, hey, this is the fulfillment, or this is an expression of my personality. But it's also an expression of your stupidity, because you're basically saying, I'm going to make myself, whether it's 10 or 100% easier to shoot than the guy next to me. That's all that you're really telling people. And your idea of however you're expressing yourself is just foolish nonsense. Moving on to the Reclaimer. I still have it. Why? As some people have pointed out in recent videos, like the idea of blowing somebody up on a landing pad, and they go like, well, at this point it's just griefing. Well, not entirely. Part of it is learning, is planning. It's kind of thinking like, okay, how far out can I lock torpedoes? How long does it take the torpedoes to get there? How long does it take for, my friend to shut off the comm array? How do I time all of these things to happen together? What kind of ship do I need to go and pick up the cargo? A lot of people are exploring these ideas, and at this very early stage in Star Citizen, it's legitimate exploration, looking forward to mechanics that we are going to be getting, some in the very near future, some in the distant future, like Salvage. You have to realize that your ship that is out there in the universe right now, let's say you're flying a Caterpillar, and you're going out and you're getting Laranite or Agricium or whatever. Your ship is not only the value of the cargo that's upon it, but it's the value of the scrap metal that would result if your ship explodes, the components, the engines, the shields, anything that might survive that explosion. When you kind of add all these things up and you think about going to New Deal or Astro Armada or Teach's Ship Shop, and you think about the amount of money that you're spending on some of these ships, you start to realize the aggregate value of the cargo and the ship. Even if it drops it by 20%, you think about a ship like the Carrack. 20% for one blown up ship? It seems like kind of a sweet deal. That's a lot of UEC. Now do you understand? Now, CIG's defense mechanism for these shenanigans. There's a certain amount of law and order within the universe. There's a certain chance that, let's say you put out a distress call, oh, I'm under attack, and all of a sudden the police show up. That's, by the way, that's something that could potentially be blocked in the future. CIG has alluded to that in the past, and certainly ships like the Herald or other E-War platforms could possibly play a role in that. But the idea that you're going to go out and you're going to just call for help and help's going to show up, that may not always be the case. Recently we lost armistice zones, or many of the armistice zones. They're still technically there, but people can still shoot at you. And, this is not something that, well, that's as far as it goes and it's going to go no further. No, it's actually going to go a lot further. Now, before you panic and you say, oh my God, this is not the game I want, Chris Roberts, how dare you, refund. The truth of it is that as we haven't seen the reality of Salvage and the impact that it's going to have in the future universe, as we've talked about, one of the things that we also haven't seen is the reality of NPC population in the universe. Remember, you're a player, you're a person, you're unpredictable. You make unpredictable choices, you do unpredictable things. NPCs, despite the fact that game designers love to use the word AI, yet none of them has ever created one, but they love to say AI. NPCs are hilariously predictable. You know what they're going to do, you know where they're going to path, you can virtually predict everything that you can do. Players have built an entire online industry of explaining NPC behaviors in just about every single video game that has ever existed and how to defeat them. I mean, this is a multi-million-dollar, if not billion-dollar industry of players teaching other players how to beat NPCs in video games. And a lot of that is based off of that predictability. And that may prove to be a very attractive quality for a pirate or someone who just happens to own a reclaimer that just happens to show up whenever a ship mysteriously explodes on the landing pad. That may prove to be very attractive, that predictability, that, you know, that expectation of they're going to do this and then they're going to do that, so I know how to counter these two moves, boom, done. A player may be a lot less predictable, especially a player that takes care, scans landing sites, looks around them, isn't just working off of the spreadsheet and the formula, how much UEC per hour, but they're saying, how do I not kill myself? How many times am I not going to kill myself per hour? If that's the more important, calculation, then those players are probably going to do all right. And with all these NPCs that are supposed to populate the universe, if you think about it in today's terms, 50 players, that means there should be 450 rather, NPCs out there wandering around with their ships. I don't think that 10-1 or 90-10 split that CIG is talking about includes all the people wandering around on Lorville or Area 18 or wherever. I think they're mainly talking about ships. So you may get lost in the noise and you may not have to worry about it as much, but you're still going to have to think about it. You're still going to have to think about these things. And that's kind of really where the Reclaimer comes from. There's a lot of ships that I kind of juggle around in my head and I kind of go like, how might this work out in the future? What new game mechanics are coming online? What things have CIG not finished? What are some of the things that CIG has yet to change with this ship that could change the way it behaves in the universe? What are we realizing about the physics in Star Citizen and how that changes combat from what's been idealized to what's actually happening? And the Reclaimer, despite its litany of bugs and its litany of problems, that plague it, being a dead ship, being a ship where the elevators don't always work, being a ship that, sometimes when it lands, it strangely pushes the pilot through the surface of a planet. All these problems that the Reclaimer has. The one thing that is kind of held true to is it is still one of the best designed ships in Star Citizen. It has everything you need, places to store your armor. It doesn't have discrete weapon storage spaces, but they are going to give it a once-over at some point once they finish Salvage and they realize we can't release Salvage with a broken ship. We're probably going to get a few once-overs, but there's plenty of places to store weapons. There's places to store food, clothing, armor, all the stuff that you're going to need on your voyage. Beyond that, it's a ship that is made for recycling shipwrecks. And if you know anything about the Star Citizen community and the ways players behave, towards one another out there in space, you'll know that there really isn't going to be a shortage of shipwrecks in Star Citizen. And the Vulture owners and the Reclaimer owners are going to be very, very busy. When you think about the Caterpillar, or you think about the Carrack, or you think about a Hercules, not just the value of the cargo that it can potentially carry, but the value of the ship that's carrying it. You know what? Just for argument's sake, let's take the Carrack, for example. Let's say you and your pirate friends blow up a Carrack, and the Carrack's hauling cargo or whatever. The total recycled value of the Carrack, is, let's say, 10% of its actual ship value, which is what, like 25 million right now? Let's say it's just 10% of that. That's 2.5 million UEC. That's a lot of money. Think about all the ships that you see at Teach's Ship Shop, at New Deal, at Astro Armada. Cut those ship values down to 10%. Even some basic little beginner ships would still net you 30,000, 40,000, 500, or 50,000 UEC. If let's say this this formula that I am just throwing out as a guess works out. Even if it was just 5%, that's still a lot of money, especially even if you have to split it a number of ways. Now, I do believe that the Reclaimer is a ship that goes beyond what a single player can manage. Flying it out of Area 18 or flying it out of Lorville will teach you that very, very quickly, because you're spinning plates trying to get this ship out of those locations, and you can imagine having to land there if you ever had to, having to radio in commands while you're fighting the ship to keep it up in the sky and all these things. This is not going to be an easy ship to fly, but it is potentially going to be a very profitable ship. Even if it's only 5%, even if it's only 10% of the value of the ship once you get it to black market and its cargo. The Reclaimer is somewhat unique as it is kind of a ship that its primary function and what it's supposed to do, even though how it does it is still a little bit of a mystery. The Reclaimer is functionally just a beautiful, beautiful ship. It basically shows so much potential in terms of raw money making that it's not a ship that ever really enters into my head to get rid of it. I spend a lot of time thinking about this ship and how CIG is going to kind of fix it, put it together, get it going in the game. Sometimes more than others, when Salvage used to occupy a slot on the on the pipeline, or the roadmap. Sorry. I've never looked at this ship and said, this is a ship that doesn't look like it's going to fulfill its promise. This is a ship that doesn't look like it's going to be able to do its job. There are issues, there are quirks, there are bugs, there are problems, yes. And those are all going to be solved. But the core idea of what the ship is and what the ship is supposed to do is still 100% solid. Do I think that this is going to be like the video that I made, I think it was just about a year ago, where I destroyed the NPC Hammerhead with the Reclaimer? No, I don't think that that's really going to come to light, but a Reclaimer as part of a group assaulting Caterpillar? Potentially. It's going to be very, very interesting to see where this ship finally kind of lands, but at its core, what it is, what it's supposed to be in the universe is entirely solid. The idea that drives the ship's existence is unassailable. In this universe, think about it. How many people are going to be blowing each other up? How many shipwrecks are you going to see? Remember, we're going to a place where those shipwrecks are going to become semi-permanent, where you can harvest them, where you can pull out components like guns, shields. What are all these things worth in UEC? The potential income from a ship like this, just players being players and blowing each other up all around you, especially if you're friends with the right players and they're like, hey, you know what? If you give us a chunk of that, we'll let you come on in here and harvest this Hercules that we blew up, this Idris that we blew up, something like that. The potential income from a ship like this, this and the Vulture are almost must-haves if you're a pirate, because at the end of the day, if you can create a situation where you blow up somebody's ship and there's no help coming and there's no way for them to get back to their shipwreck, you're going to have, especially depending on where you blow it up, you're going to have free reign over that wreck. So why not make the most out of it? And I mean, as a personal conceit, I do kind of want to see how far a Reclaimer can be pushed in terms of potential combat role. I don't think that it's going to be going up against any capitals. And I certainly think that, when I talked about the Perseus being torpedo bait, this thing is torpedo bait times 10. This thing is a huge torpedo magnet. And there's going to be a lot of threats out there, but used smartly, used in the right situations, I think that this could potentially be a very profitable ship to have if you happen to be somebody who finds themselves in proximity to a lot of valuable shipwrecks. In a way, it is kind of like a default pirate ship, if you think about it.
Thank you for watching. So if you want to keep up with the latest and greatest in Star Citizen and Squadron 42's development, please follow us on our social media channels. See you soon.